What happens when a Hollywood icon known for his calm, steady charm is pushed past his breaking point on live television? When an interview meant to be lighthearted suddenly twists, tightens, and ignites into something the audience of The View never saw coming. When Chris Evans, Captain America himself, stares across that glossy table under blistering studio lights and chooses not to hold back. Before we dive in, hit subscribe to Stage View, like this video, and drop your thoughts in the comments. You're about to witness a confrontation so shocking it left the studio frozen, the producers scrambling, and the world asking what the hell just happened. It began, innocently, deceptively, like any other morning taping. The studio hummed with that usual mix of warm chatter and electric anticipation. Fans held up signs. Cameras rolled. The hosts took their seats, settling in behind their steaming mugs and confident smiles. And then he walked in. Chris Evans stepped onto the stage with that familiar modest grin, waving politely as the audience roared. A few people even stood up, hands fluttering like they'd just seen a miracle. He wore a navy sweater, simple, unassuming. Everything about him soft-spoken, steady, grounded. No one could have predicted what would happen next. Sara Haines leaned forward the moment he sat down. Sharp. Eager. Too eager. The kind of eagerness that doesn't belong in a simple promotional interview. And Chris must have sensed that energy because his smile flickered. Just for a second, like a candle hit by a cold draft. So Chris, Sara began, her tone sweet but wrapped in something else entirely. We've all seen the headlines. You've been pretty vocal lately, and some might say defensive about certain rumors. Why is that? The audience shifted, just slightly, just enough. A rustle of discomfort. Chris blinked, caught off guard. Well, he said, I'm not sure what rumors you're referring to. Oh, come on, she cut him off. Let's not play coy. People have noticed changes. Behavior changes. Public outbursts. Tension with other actors. Even some fans are wondering if you've lost your cool. A murmur. A collective inhale. Chris sat straighter. His jaw tensed, not in anger, but in that quiet, deliberate way people do when trying to remain composed. I'm fine, he said carefully. I've been working hard, and... But see, that's the thing, Sara continued, relentless. Your team keeps saying everything is fine. You keep saying everything is fine. But some people think you're hiding something. The studio froze. Even Joy Behar raised an eyebrow. Chris's eyes narrowed, not aggressively, but defensively. A man cornered without warning. I don't hide anything, he said. If I'm struggling, I've always been honest about it. But are you honest now? Sara challenged. A sharp gasp rippled through the crowd. Chris's stare darkened, not with fury, but with hurt. Sara, what exactly are you implying? Sara leaned back with the coolness of someone who knew she had just crossed a line and had no intention of stepping back. I'm just asking the questions your fans want answers to. No, Chris said softly. You're asking the questions that stir drama. There's a difference. The air tightened. Even the cameras seemed to zoom in closer, as if drawn helplessly into the tension. Whoopi tried to interject, her voice steady. Maybe we should. But Sara wasn't done. She pressed forward again, her voice low, pointed. Chris, you've been lashing out, avoiding press, contradicting your own publicist. Are you in a good place emotionally? Or is something going on behind the scenes? And then silence. Long, cold, suffocating silence. Chris looked down at his hands. When he finally spoke, his voice trembled, not from weakness, but restrained frustration. I came here to talk about a project I'm proud of. I didn't come here to be ambushed. Gasps. Whispers. A few people murmured, wow. Sara's expression hardened, a flicker of something like triumph crossing her face. Well, sometimes the truth is an ambush. Something snapped. It was subtle, quiet, but it was unmistakable. Chris looked up, eyes burning with something raw and unfiltered. You know what, Sara? For years, people like you have picked apart everything I do, every look, every emotion, every misstep. You twist it, you poke at it, and you call it journalism. Sara froze, eyes widening. But it's not journalism, Chris continued, voice rising. It's provocation disguised as curiosity. It's making assumptions to get reactions. And you want to know why fans think I've changed? Because I'm tired of pretending this is normal. The audience erupted. Some clapped. Some gasped. Some whispered furiously to each other. Chris wasn't done. And if you think I'm going to sit here and let you imply something is wrong with me, emotionally or mentally, just to get a clip to trend on social media, you're mistaken. The studio was now a pressure cooker ready to blow. Sarah's confidence faltered, just slightly, but enough for the audience to catch it. Chris, she said, forcing a laugh. I'm just doing my job. No, Chris said firmly, leaning forward. Your job is to ask fair questions, not to corner someone with insinuations you can't back up. The room went silent. And then, a producer gestured frantically from off camera. Whoopi attempted to break the tension again, but the moment was out of anyone's control. Chris took a deep breath. This isn't a conversation anymore, he said. It's a setup. Sarah's composure cracked. A setup? Seriously? Yes, Chris snapped. And I'm done pretending it's okay. The audience was glued, breathless, locked in suspense as the confrontation hung in the air like smoke. This was no longer an interview. It was a line being drawn. And nobody, not the hosts, not the viewers, not even Chris, knew what would happen next. The tension didn't fade. It thickened. Chris leaned back, running a hand through his hair, clearly trying to regain control of his breath. The studio lights blasted down on him, washing the color from his face. But it wasn't weakness, it was restraint. A man choosing not to explode despite every provocation pulling him toward it. Sarah doubled down. Chris, if you feel set up, maybe it's because you're not used to being questioned. People adore you, sure, but that doesn't make you untouchable. The audience groaned. Some boos. A woman in the second row shook her head vigorously. Chris's entire demeanor shifted, not angry but disappointed. A different kind of wound. I'm not untouchable, he replied quietly. I'm human. That's the part you forget. Sarah exhaled sharply. Okay, then let's talk like humans. Are you or are you not struggling with anger issues right now? A collective gasp. A man in the back shouted, What is wrong with her? Chris's eyes widened. His jaw clenched so hard it looked painful. That, he said slowly, is an extremely irresponsible question. Is it? Sarah challenged. Or is it the question everyone's thinking but too afraid to ask? Chris laughed, not amused, not sarcastic. A bitter, wounded laugh. You really think you're saying what people want? Or are you projecting something you want from me? Some meltdown? Some headline? Sarah flinched. Bingo. Joy Behar jumped in, trying to redirect the spiraling energy. Chris, maybe we should talk about the film. No, Chris cut in, surprisingly steady now. No more avoiding. If Sarah wants honesty, let's give her honesty. He turned fully toward Sarah. You want to know why I seem different? Why I've been quiet? Why I don't do as much press as I used to? Sarah swallowed. The audience leaned in. It's because fame is loud, Chris said. Louder than people realize. Everyone wants something. Everyone projects something. Everyone watches and waits for you to slip. The room hung on every syllable. And for years, I let that pressure eat at me, he continued. I tried to be perfect. Calm. Nice. Everything people expect. His voice cracked, not broken, but human. But perfection isn't real. And when I stopped pretending, stopped smiling on command, suddenly everyone thought something was wrong with me. The audience murmured in sympathy. Sarah blinked, clearly unsure how to proceed. Chris, I didn't mean to. Yes, you did, he said, but softer now. You meant to push. And I get it. This show loves tough questions. But there's a line between tough and invasive. A long pause. Sarah stared at him across the table, searching for a comeback, a defense, something to hold on to. But she found nothing. And Chris saw it. He sighed, shaking his head. I'm not angry, he said. I'm exhausted. Silence. I'm exhausted from constantly being dissected. From people assuming I'm falling apart because I show emotion. From being asked if I'm okay every time I speak passionately. The tension in the room shifted. Softened. It was no longer explosive. It was painfully honest. Sarah looked uncomfortable. Vulnerable, even. Chris, she said quietly. If that's the case, I'm sorry. That wasn't my intention. He nodded. Maybe not. But it's the impact. Sarah looked down. For once, she didn't have a counter-punch. Whoopi finally stepped in. Let's take a moment, she said, her tone gentle yet authoritative. This show is about conversation, not confrontation. But the confrontation had already happened, and its aftershocks were far from over. Because Chris wasn't finished. He turned back to the audience, and the millions watching behind screens. You want the truth, he asked. The real truth. They waited, breath held. I'm tired of being treated like a headline instead of a person. Applause erupted, unprompted, emotional, overwhelming. Chris stared at them, stunned. Sarah swallowed hard, clearly shaken. The energy in the room wasn't angry. It was awakened. And that shift, the support, the reaction, sparked something in Sara that would ignite the second wave of conflict. Because as the audience applauded Chris, Sara felt herself losing control. And control is something she doesn't lose. Not without a fight. The applause faded, replaced by a shifting unease. Something was brewing behind Sara's eyes, something sharp, wounded, defensive. And when people like her feel cornered, they don't retreat. They strike. So, she said suddenly, cutting through the warmth like a blade. You're the victim now? The audience gasped so sharply it felt like an inhaled scream. Chris's head snapped toward her. Excuse me? Sara kept going, fast, clipped, emotional. You're blaming the media, blaming interviews, blaming the fans. But you never once ask yourself if maybe you are acting differently. A rumble of disapproval rolled through the crowd. Joy whispered, "Oh, Sara," under her breath. But Sara was locked in. You talk about exhaustion, she said. But maybe this isn't exhaustion. Maybe this is who you really are when the Marvel spotlight isn't protecting you. Chris froze. The room froze with him. He leaned forward slowly, elbows on the table, eyes locked onto hers with a calm that was far scarier than anger. Do you want to know who I really am? He asked quietly. Sara didn't respond. The question wasn't meant for her alone. It was for the entire room. I'm a person who spent 10 years being the symbol of composure, he said. A person who had to watch everything he said because one wrong comment would be dissected for months. A person who learned to smile even when people twisted his words or judged his life choices. He paused. I'm someone who thought being vulnerable would make things easier. But clearly, he motioned gently toward her, it only makes me an easier target. Sara exhaled, frustrated. You're twisting this. No, Chris said. I'm explaining it. And I'm telling you, she snapped, that you're being overly sensitive. These are normal questions. The audience erupted in boos. Sara's eyes widened. She hadn't expected that. But Chris didn't bask in the reaction. He didn't smirk. Didn't celebrate. He simply said, normal doesn't make it healthy. A long, heavy pause. The tension now had weight. Shape. A heartbeat. The cameras zoomed closer, capturing every subtle shift of expression. Sara's burning frustration, Chris's controlled calm, Whoopi's concern, Joy's discomfort. Chris looked at Sara again. You asked me if something's wrong, he said quietly. So let me answer you honestly. The room leaned in. Yes, something is wrong, he said. What's wrong is the idea that being emotional is a flaw. That being honest is weakness. That being human means something's wrong with you. Another wave of applause, bigger this time. Sara looked around, unnerved by the support he was receiving. She muttered, "This is ridiculous," under her breath, loud enough for the mic to catch. Chris heard it, and for the first time, something sharp flickered across his face. Do you know what's actually ridiculous? He asked. The expectation that celebrities should let you poke at their mental health for entertainment. Dead silence. He let the words settle. Do better, he whispered. Sara opened her mouth, then closed it. There was nothing to say. Whoopi signaled the producers. They considered cutting to commercial, but the live audience was so locked in, so electrified, that interrupting the moment felt impossible. Chris leaned back, exhaling deeply, the tremble in his fingers barely noticeable. Then he said something unexpected. I don't blame you, Sara. I really don't. She looked up, startled. This system, it rewards confrontation. It punishes empathy. It pushes you to pry because people want drama. Another silence, thoughtful this time. But I'm asking you, he said, to see people, not personas. Sara looked at him with a mixture of shock, defensiveness, and something softer, guilt. The audience murmured, sensing a shift. Chris, she began, voice smaller, uncertain. I didn't realize. He shook his head. You didn't want to realize. That's the difference. It wasn't cruel. It was truthful. Sara inhaled, trembling slightly. I was just doing my job. I know, Chris said. But maybe it's time to rethink what that job should be. The room fell into a gentle, thoughtful hush. For the first time in 10 minutes, Sara didn't argue. She didn't push back. She didn't deflect. She simply sat there, absorbing the weight of the moment and the consequences of her own choices. The tension hadn't disappeared, but it had transformed. And now, the world outside those studio walls was about to transform with it. The moment the cameras cut, the studio didn't breathe, it exhaled. A shaky, uneven release of pressure. Audience members stood, some applauding Chris, others staring at Sara with disbelief. People whispered to each other, clutching their phones, already typing, already preparing to upload the moment to every corner of the internet. Chris remained seated for a moment, shoulders rising and falling with slow, deliberate breaths. His eyes were distant, like he was replaying everything in his mind, wondering how a simple interview spiraled into a public clash. Sara tried to leave the table quietly, but a producer hurried to her, whispering urgently. Her expression hardened, anger clashing with embarrassment. One audience member shouted, "We love you, Chris." He smiled weakly, but the battle had already left its mark. Within minutes, Twitter, X, exploded. Chris Evans just dragged Sara Haines on live TV. Sara went too far. Mental health isn't a punchline. This is the most intense interview I've ever seen. Protect Chris at all costs. Clips spread faster than wildfire. Millions of views. Thousands of comments. Endless debates. Some sided with Chris, praising his honesty, calling the moment brave, raw, necessary. Others defended Sara, saying she was doing her job, asking fair questions. But the energy online was overwhelmingly in Chris's favor. A trending hashtag emerged within an hour. Hashtag #StandWithEvans. Meanwhile, Sara released a statement through the show's official page. Short, tense, strained. "I never meant to make Chris uncomfortable. The conversation went in a direction none of us expected. It didn't help. People accused her of backpedaling, avoiding accountability, playing victim." The View released a second statement acknowledging the intensity of the moment, promising to review protocols for sensitive topics. Chris, on the other hand, posted something simple. A single note. "Honesty matters. Treat people gently. You don't know what they're carrying." Millions liked it within hours. Back in the studio, after the cameras stopped rolling, Chris finally rose from his chair. A producer approached him, apologizing repeatedly. "I'm okay," Chris said, voice tired but steady. "Just surprised." Whoopi placed a hand on his shoulder. "You handled that with more grace than most people would." He nodded, offering her a grateful smile. Sara stood a few feet away, hesitant, conflicted. She looked at Chris, truly looked at him. And for the first time that day, her voice was soft. "Chris, I'm sorry." He studied her for a moment, not judging, not condemning, just observing. "I accept that," he said. "But I want you to think before you ask questions like that again. Some people aren't strong enough to answer." Sara nodded, emotion tightening her face. "I will." And that was that. The confrontation ended not with shouting, but with understanding, the fragile, trembling kind that only emerges after a storm has ripped everything open. As Chris exited through the stage doors, the entire room watched him go. Not as Captain America, not as a celebrity, but as a man who refused to be reduced to a headline. Outside, the air was cool, calming, real. He inhaled deeply and walked toward his car, knowing the world wanted more from him. More statements, more explanations, more reactions. But he had said what he needed to say. And for once, that was enough. Now the story belongs to the world. To the viewers. To you. So tell me, who do you think was right? Was Sara out of line? Or was Chris justified in standing his ground? Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. And if you want more explosive confrontations, dramatic deep dives, and cinematic retellings just like this, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. This is Stage View, where every story feels like a movie. And trust me, more shocks are coming.